So hello guys, in this video we will be creating this lava kind of effect or like this orb on this one, and it's pretty easy to make. I have previously made this dark energy kind of orb, then I made this water orb, and then I made this plasma orb. All videos are present. Today we'll make this, and in the next video we will make this. This is like basic, and I can even show you guys like this how it looks. Look at this. So a sun orb, pretty basic. Also, if you go to my website, you will find every texture link and everything that I make in here. Even the files, like this files would be available on my Patreon. The link would be there. It's free. So this file would be free. And in future, if I keep making like different type of orbs, I will add this in this page so that you can keep scrolling and keep finding, different types of orbs. So it's easy for you to like get much variations and tutorials all in one page. And if you want free textures, you could click on these textures. I post every texture that I make in here. This is all CC0, so you could use it for commercial, personal projects. Just download in here, and if you have any suggestion for the website, just let me know. If I ever make anything paid, it would be in resources section, and it would have some cost. Like you could see, it says $3 around here. It's placeholder, but just keep that in mind. And also I have this video called Shader VFX Fundamental and Techniques, which I would suggest watching if you want to know how like multiplication, addition and all the texture stuff works. So how about we get started? So first of all, we need a sphere. So I'm just going to use my previous one. It's just like this sphere, okay? So you could see it's just a normal UV sphere you could get from Blender, or simply use the modeling tools, or just do this one too. Shapes and sphere, it would give the same one. So to show you guys the previously created material, you could see how basic it is. It's like very simple one. You could see nothing's crazy in here. So let's quickly make it. Okay, so first of all, we'll create a material. I'll call it like I don't know, lava orb or sun orb, whatever you want to call it. You should always create a material instance so that you could control it with parameters pretty quickly and create variations easily without having to create like master materials always. I will go with roughness 1 and specular 0. Just this all comes down to your personal preference. If you look in here, I am using like an opaque and default lit material, but it's up to you. If you want, you could go with unlit. Unlit basically means that it would not get affected by the other lights and other conditions. We also have, you could do additive too. Additive basically means that it will add, if I let's say do apply, you could say it just disappear. That sphere, even though it's there, it just disappeared because it's adding this color. If I do, let's say black, okay, so let's say if I do black, it's just going to do nothing because black is considered as 0 and white is considered as 1. So if you check this color ramp, this is 0, this is 1, and as we go forward, it's like 0.1, 0.2, like 0.5, and as we go here, it just changes the color. So when you use additive, it's like if you use black, it's same as saying like add 0, and adding 0 is basically nothing. So which is why if you do something like white, just pure white, it's like adding 1, and you could see it should technically be visible from here, but I think it's because we are not using opacity. It's full opacity. So for me, I'm just going to use an opaque, which means like you cannot see from its front and back, or you cannot see the back of it, okay? And we can use unlit, doesn't matter, just comes down to your preference. I'll add a texture, convert this to a parameter so that we can change with material instance. Call it as texture. And I'm going to use this texture. This is available in free pack on, it's made by Screaming Brain Studios. I will link it in my website. Like you will find it like in this section. So wherever I add this section, again, if you go down, you'll find it there. So I'm going to use Marble 8 512 by 512. Okay, so it's a CC0 pack made by a Screaming Brain Studios, and in that folder, go to 512 Marble and this one Marble 8. Let's select this one and let's add it like this. And you could see this is how it looks. Now one more thing, I actually want to tell you guys that you could see how this looks, right? If you go to your edit project settings and look at anti-aliasing, I believe, yeah. So I think it was TSR at first, and this is how it looks. Okay, it looks blurry because it's using this anti-aliasing method. So the texture looks blurry. So if you use TAA, it's a bit better, and FXAA is like most cleaner. This just comes down to like how you're making your game, okay, or your project. So I'm using FXAA because it actually makes the texture not look blurry, but it just comes down to, you know, what you're working on. TSR is like very weird. I don't know why. You could see it creates like smearing effect. TA is also doing that. So I'm using FXAA. Again, that really comes down to, you know, which anti-aliasing you want for your game. So what I want to do is I want to move this texture up. So if I do 0.5, it will move up. You could see. Now this looks weird because I've rotated it on this top point because I was creating this, right? So I rotated it this way. So if I just rotate it back, you would see that from top, this is how it looks. From bottom, this is how, from front, this is how it looks. And we use Niagara particles. So what you could do is when you use Niagara particles, you could make the mesh always face the player. So no matter where he faces, it will always look like this front area. So you could see it will always be this front area. I've not done that. So you could see it also looks weird in here, but usually you would do that if you don't want this to look like this. Now I'm just going to move it a bit slower on left and this way. So if I show you this texture, if I open this, you would see that it goes from this to this point. So it's not straight up, it's actually bottom, it's going diagonally basically. So what I'm also doing is I'm trying to move it diagonally like this so that it looks a bit better. Again, doesn't matter if you do up and left, right, or that, but usually you would go up, and let's just play around with values until you figure out, but any texture that goes diagonally would look better for this type of effects. Now what we want to do is we want to create some distortion for this one. Now the way we create distortion is by we add something to the UVs. Okay, so to get UVs we use texture coordinate. You could press U and do left click for shortcut. This basically, if you add it like this, it's basically giving us what you call the same thing. And if we add something, we can create some distortion. So right now this looks same because we are adding 1. If I do 0.5, we basically added half of it. For example, if I add time in here, you could see it also moves like that because it goes from like up, the value keeps going up like a stopwatch. So what we basically did was we are moving the texture, but what I want to do for distortion is not move all of the texture, like all of this texture at the same space, because if I move everything at the same speed, everything moves at the same speed, so it looks like the whole texture is moving. But if I use another texture, and I will use this one, I will add this in the description or on my website, noise one, like this one. This is the one that I created. It's basic Berlin noise, which is created with Photoshop. And if I add this, you would see some weird stuff happen. Maybe it was not much noticeable, but what's actually happening is wherever there is like white color, like I said, wherever there is fully white is 1, wherever there is fully black is 0, and anything in betweens are like I don't know, like this could be 0.5, this could be like 0.9 or something like that. Okay, so instead of just putting same values everywhere on this texture, we are putting different values on this area, this area, this area, like based on the pixels, and that way it's basically creating a distortion. Now if I move this texture just to show you, we are just moving this texture, but this texture is same. Actually it's not moving, it's just creating distortion around here. You could see it's creating a weird distortion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more panel, which is basically saying that this one, like I will move it on top and I will also add some distortion on it. But because now everything is moving at the same speed, it looks same because it's applying a distortion at the same location every time as it moves. So we'll just change the speed a bit for one of it. So let's do like 0.05, 0.05. And this is how it starts to move. It looks a bit weird, but that looks okay. and based on the noise that you use, it would be like different. You could see in this one, you could even like see the difference, because this is 1, you could see it's 1, this is like 0. These are like different values, like based on the gray value, but wherever there is 1, it's moving it completely, which is why you're able to see that distortion like this. And you could even use point, and if you use like noise 1, it's like a bit more organized, I would say. Now you could even do is you could multiply this with a small value. So let's say if I do 0.1, then the distortion gets reduced, because every value in here gets multiplied by 0.1. So as our highest value, white, is 1, 1 times 0.1 is 0.1, and the lowest value is 0, so 0.1 is 0. So all our values turn from 0 to 0.1 in here. So you could use this as a intensity of distortion like this. Now what we will do is we will add a color to this one. Now there are two methods to add it. You could use curves, or you could use color ramp, which is a new node in 5.6. If you do not have color ramp because you're using older Unreal Engine, I have a video called like gradient mapping, which uses curve and curve atlas, which you could basically use to create the gradients instead of using color ramp. And curves are usually good because you could actually use the same gradient in multiple places, so you don't have to manually create every single time. So a color ramp is nothing but a gradient mapping. So right now, if I turn this to black to white, which is like the basic one, you could see there is no change, because what we are saying is that wherever there is 0, use this, wherever there is 1, use this, which is like basically what this texture is. But if I do a different color and say that wherever there is 0, use this orange color, it basically uses orange color, and wherever there is like 0.2, it will use this color, 0.5, it will use this color. If I do pink, reddish, this is how it would look. Now obviously you could go and make it like intensify like this, or based on the texture it's different. Okay, so you could do this. You could even add like an extra color in center and it will look different. You could see, you could create some wacky stuff with this. Okay, looks a bit weird, but I have this color ramp, which is the colors that I've used. So I'm just going to use this one. Okay, so I'll show the colors that I've used. It takes time to figure out which colors work well, which is why I don't want to bore you with like showing all the stuff. So I've used this color F2B854FF. Then I've used this color FF6B00FF. Then I've used red color FF0037FF. And then I've used this color 3D0001FF. And again, if you like change it, it will look a bit different. Okay, so based on where you use these colors, how intensify you want this, how much red you want this, based on this texture, we are basically color mapping it. And you could see we get a bit similar stuff. It's a bit harsher, like, but you have to play around with values. And I think I've used like different texture for this one in my original one, which is cloud texture, I believe. Let's see. I've used this texture. So I'll also link this, and you could see it's not black and white texture, right? But why is that? Well, simply it is black and white because R channel is this texture, G channel is this texture, and P channel is this texture. So instead of creating 3 different texture, you could just create one and just add it like this. Now one more thing you might notice is that this looks a bit more cleaner and like has more depth in it, but this one does not have that depth in it. It looks very flat. And the reason for this is very simple, because around here there is a rim light, you could see, and this is very common effect for orbs or stuff like this glowing stuff, because light hits around here, and which is why it also makes it glowy at the edges. So let's just add a Fresnel. Fresnel basically, I've shown how Fresnel works and all in the last 3 videos, so just watch that, because this video will turn like way too big. I don't want to make it. So Fresnel basically just creates a rim light, like we get 1 to 0 point like this. If we add power, we can just make this like black and this stuff like this. And again, you could play around with these values. If you do 1, 3, it gets sharper. If you do this, it will basically decrease or increase the white area, sorry, black area, and do stuff like this. Just play around with values until you figure out that works. I'll use 3, I guess. And what I'll simply do is I will multiply this with the color ramp. Let's see if this even works. Okay, it does work. So right now what we basically did was we are multiplying this top area, which is fully white, as 1 multiplied by anything gives the same texture. So anything that we have in here we will get the same texture. But as we go closer to this, it's 0, right? So wherever multiplied by 0 would give us 0. So any like 56 multiplied by 0 is 0, 80 multiplied by 0 is 0, and then as we go in here, it's 0.5, right? So it just reduces the intensity by half and creates this nice gradient. And what we can do is we can multiply this area, like this part only, with a high value like 20, because we are using emissive, right? And emissive can go above these values, and we get this harsher value like this. Now we can add both of this. So we can take this texture and we can simply just add both of them, and we get this glowy effect around the edge, and it kind of adds depth, you can see. Now next thing we need to do is we need to create this distortion, like this lava is bubbling, it's very hot kinda. And again, if you want to play around with it, you need to actually play around with the values until you get something like this, or like something like this. Just play around until it satisfies you. Now to do this, we will use world position offset. Now I actually have a video for world position offset. If you want to go in much more depth for it, like understand what it does, how the values work, and what and how the math works, this one, animate mesh with the material, just watch that. It would help you understand the world position offset. And what we are basically doing is we are just all the vertices in here, like whatever the vertices are here, I'll just give like a small quick explanation. So what we are basically doing is all this vertex in here, right? So these are like all vertex, basically like these points. I don't know if there's a way to see, yeah, wireframe. So you could see these are all vertices around here. It's very hard to tell in Unreal Engine because it's like way too like colorful right now. So just know that we are just messing around with vertices and just moving it like a bit left and right based on what we add in here. Okay, so for example, in here, if I just add let's say 20, you would see that it actually moved like in a different direction. It's not like in here, because we moved all the vertices in like 20 in all three axes, x, y, z. Okay, like in x, y, and z direction. So it moved up, right, and on the x-axis by 20, whatever it is, like 20 centimeter, I think. So what we can do is we can use a texture again. I'll just use I guess this texture, why not? Again, this texture is like very basic one. If you want to make, it's just going into Photoshop and clicking render clouds. You could use Photopea free app, which also has the option to like create this texture. Just go in photopea.com and use filter render clouds and just export this as a texture, and you'll get this arc channel. Okay, this channel, if you don't want to download. Now if I do add, it's not going to show much difference. You could see there is a bit of a difference, but that is because this is 0 to 1, right? Our textures are 0 to 1, so doing like 1 centimeter of difference is not going to be much visible. Okay, actually I should multiply. So if I multiply all values, so the highest value is 1, right? If I do 20, it's going to do this. You could see it looks a bit weird, but we are basically doing is wherever there is white, it will say 20, like on that pixel. Like, I don't know if I can show you this. Yeah, so you could even tell like there is white in here, so it's doing the most, because 20 times 1 is 20, and where there's black, 20 times 0 is like 0, so no difference. But there's one more thing we need to do to make it look better, is use vertex normal. So right now we are just adding this as like I don't know how it calculates, but right now this is just adding weirdly. It's not adding it on each vertexes. So what we need to do is we need to actually multiply this. So whatever the vertex angle and whatever this vertex normals are, we need to actually multiply on that one and then add it like this. And that way it actually faces the correct direction, else everything just faces one direction. So right now it is facing down. You could see it's now facing that direction and all that stuff. And then it's simple, we just pan this texture 0.1 I guess, and you could see we get this like this direction, and you could see that as the texture is moving, it's also moving this stuff. So now let's remove the emissive, let's add it this way, and we get this bubbling effect. You could see now reducing this is like very important. Just create everything into parameters. Okay, so just promote this into parameters and say that intensity, WPO intensity, like this. But what I've actually done in here is I've used dynamic parameter, and what this actually allows is that we can control this parameter from our Niagara system. So let's do that instead. So instead of using this one is good if you want to use material instance, but right now I want to use it via our Niagara system. So I'll just use a dynamic parameter. It's nothing but same as creating, you know, 4 parameters. Okay, so instead of, you know, creating this 4 parameter, it just gives us one of it, which is like 1 2 3 4. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So if you take this, select this first parameter, and we will name our first parameter, which is the red color one, into WPO intensity, like this. And then we can say the default value to be 5. Okay, so instead of creating 4 of them, you could just use this way, like, okay, so that we can use in dynamic parameter in particle system, sorry. So let's quickly turn this into Niagara system so that I can add these particles around it. So let's do Niagara system, empty, ns, I don't know what to call it, like lava orb or something. Double click on it, we'll do it a bit faster. Okay, I think the video is turning out to be way too unnecessarily big. I keep trying to explain much more stuff, so let me know if you guys want to know a bit more detail like this, or if you want me to just rush and create like 10-minute videos or 15 minutes video, because I didn't find like lots of tutorials online which explain this much, which is why I like to do it this detailed one so that others can understand. So first Niagara emitter is just going to be our mesh render, and for mesh we will use this same mesh. So let's select our mesh to be the SM sphere, and then enable material overrides, open this, and I'll use this material. Okay, nothing showing because we are not spawning anything. So in this one I'll do spawn burst, and then we only want to spawn one of it. But one more thing is, if I turn this to, let's say I turn the lifetime to be 2, you would see what would happen. It would just disappear, and then after 5 seconds it will pop back. We don't want that, we want it to exist forever. So what we could do is, what it was actually doing is, when you use like 2 lifetime, it was spawning it after 5 seconds, because this is set to loop every 5 seconds. So this one only lasted for 2 seconds, and then after 5 seconds it basically just starts everything. But you could also like override this. So instead of using this system, we could also say self. But what I'm just going to do is, instead of doing all that stuff, I'm just going to say that it does not die when it is reaching its lifetime. I'll also make it GPU based, because you usually use CPU if you want to add some collision and stuff. But if it's something like no collision and stuff, then we use like GPU stuff, because it's like much more optimized. And then once I select this, I'll just go into life cycle and just say once, so it only runs once. If you don't do that, what would happen is every 5 seconds it will keep spawning this stuff. But because we have set it to not die, then it would just keep stacking. So it would turn into two of these spears, 3 of these spear on top of each other, which is why I said that it will only last once, but it also never dies. So we only spawn once, no matter how much time there goes. Then the next thing is, we want to create that effect around here, okay, which is this, what you call this, whatever it is, okay, a smoke, I believe. Create minimal emitter, let's just call it smoke. I'm just not going to worry about matching the names correctly. And I will do spawn rate instead of burst rate. I will do spawn rate. If I just check this, you could see we are spawning 10 of it. We need to actually create this material for this smoke. So I'll just do m underscore I'll do TUT smoke because I have lots of them. Turn this to 1, turn this to 0. I'll also turn this to additive. So additive and unlit. Okay. And in here, I'll use the texture, which I'll link it in my website. So I'll add this texture on my website, smoke sprite sheet, like this. It's a texture with 3x3 smokes with different patterns. I created this using this effect texture maker by this GitHub. There should be like smoke somewhere, and basically just play around with values and then export it. It is 3x3. I'll add it in my website, and then we simply just connect it to emissive, and then we connect it to opacity. But there's one more thing we need to do, because, or you know what, let me just show you without doing it. Okay, so let's go into a sprite renderer and say that we want to use this material, mtutorial smoke. And you could say this is basically getting spawned, like it is spawning 10 of it. You could even see if I do like shape location, if I do in this one shape location, you could see it is spawning that. So what we need to tell is go into sprite renderer, sub UV, and say that it is actually 3x3, like 3x3. Okay, and it starts doing some stuff, but what it's doing right now, it's only showing the first one. So in this particle spawn, what I'll do is I'll add sub UV animation. Okay, now if you want to animate it from going from 1 to 3, like this smoke, like a sprite sheet, you need to add in particle update. But as I want to only show it once, I'll add it like particle spawn, like when it spawns. And this one is not like an animated texture. Okay, it is like completely different, so it would not look good if you use it in particle update. So let's go to sprite renderer, like say that we want to use this sprite renderer like here, and still not doing anything because we need to go in here. Right now it is set to linear. That's basically when you want to animate, but right now I'll use random. So right now it will start spawning random of them. So any random one of it will just spawn. So again, if we add it in particle update, it would not work well, okay, because it will try to keep changing the sprite into different type of smoke. And this one is like not an animated sprite sheet. So just keep that in mind. Again, you could check other videos. But when we add in particle spawn, what it's doing is it's randomly selecting one of it and then spawning it with that, okay, like this. Now what I'll do is in the particle update, because I want to update it like continuously, right, I'll add a rotation. I think it's called sprite rotation. Yeah, sprite rotation rate. And is it even rotating? Let's do like 50. Yeah, so you could say it's rotating, but I will do a random range float. So it will randomly do between 30 to 60, or actually do negative 30 to 30 maybe. Yeah, that looks good enough. Now what I want to do is I want it to spawn on this surface. So if I use my shape location, you could see it's now spawning like everywhere, right? If I let's say do 50, maybe it will be like this, but it's actually spawning even inside. I don't want that. So in the shape location, if you select this sphere surface distribution and turn this to 1, it will only spawn on the surface. So you could see in the center there's nothing. Now we simply need to play around with the size. So let's go to initialize particles, sprite size mode, and I'll do random uniform. So let's do, I don't know, 20 to 50, 30 to 50, 50 to 100. Nope, that's too much. 50 to 80, that is also too much. So 60, 30, let's like isolate it. That's too much. 20 to 50. Okay, I think that's good enough. You could play around with it yourself. And now if I let's say try to do something like colors for this one, you see it's not working at all. So why is that? Well, simply because we have just given this as the color, but it is not able to get these values into this material. And for that we use something called particle color. So you know how we use the dynamic parameter so that we can control this WPO. I forgot to show you guys, but I'll show after this one. But that's how we this like red color material nodes are usually used for like this particle effect. So basically it will take this value and pass it through here. So we can just take this, go to RGB and multiply it with this one, and then we'll take this alpha, which is the opacity, and multiply with R channel with this one. Okay, so one mistake I used to do in the past is I used to use this A channel here, which make no sense, because if you check this texture, there is no A channel. You could see there is no A channel. So it just gives like a white, which is why it's better that you use R on the opacity and then add it like this, unless you manually created an A channel for it. Now what it will do is it will multiply this color, which is whichever it is provided from here. You could see it's already showing. It will multiply with this texture and add here. Whatever alpha is here, it will multiply it with this one and add here. And you could even do random range. So if you want, you could do white and do 20, this one, so it starts going brighter. And then you could even do reddish. Let's do 10. And then we get some variations. Let's drag this in here, and you could see if I moved it up, it didn't really move it with this one. That is because we need to go in here and say that this is a local space. That way this at least this one moves with it. We also might need to do this one for local space. Okay, there we go. And if you want, you could even select this mesh and say that facing mode is camera position. That way it always faces the camera. That way we cannot see the top area like this. Okay. Another thing I forgot to show you is the dynamic parameter. So you could see I added the dynamic in particle spawn, but you could also in particle update if you want to change it as like as the particle is updating in every single frame. It's usually used for like corrosion and like making it disappear nicely. I've already have like videos on it, so but for now we are the WPO doesn't really need to change every single frame, so we can just play around with it. So if I do, let's say 10, it's too much. 50, it's too much, you could see. So let's do 5, 10, like this, and you could see we are now able to control it based on this parameter. It's usually good if you want to make this smaller. Okay, if you want to make this smaller using, I don't know what it's used, like it's used from here. Yeah, scale, rotation, and all that stuff. Another thing is this particles moving outside. So let's add this quickly. But before that, you could see that this is disappearing instantly, right? So what we could do is we can go to particle update and say scale color and use a float for the alpha, which is why, you know, we did this stuff, which is we connected the alpha from here with the opacity override, and that way we can say that do this. So at start it's 111, and as we go to here it will turn to 0, and anything multiplied by 0 is 0, which means 0 opacity. So what it basically does is that it fades out instead of disappearing. But the reason why it's not disappearing is because the lifetime is like full. So let's just go in here and do some let's say 2 to 5. You could see right now it is, I will 2 to 5 is not good because this is like changing every 5 seconds. So let's just do 2 to 4. You could even increase this one. Okay, it doesn't really matter, but now you could see it's fading out. We can also add corrosion and stuff, but for this one I'm just keeping it like this. Let's add embers. So let's do embers. Embers are very basic to add, so I'll just use this same shape location in here in particle spawn. I'll also use the same spawn rate in my emitter update. Fix issue, so it's after this one. Let's go in here. It's very small. So in the particle spawn I'll add some velocity. Now you would see one issue that if I do fix, it actually makes this error disappear, and I think it's bug in 5.7.4 or 5.7.3 because there are two fix options, you know. I don't know if it's showing. Yeah, there are two fix issues, so I have to click both of them, but it's only making me click like one of it and then disappears. You could see. So let's do fix issue, which adds this one, and then we will have to manually add solve forces and velocity, because once you click the first one it adds this one, second one it adds this one, but it's only adding one because this one adds it at the start and this one calculates it every frame because it's in particle update. And the add velocity will do from point because I want it to go like outside. Let's make this disappear, and then I'll simply just reduce the size of it. I'll also make this like last very low So let's do 1 to 2, random uniform 1 to 5. Is the shape location not working or what? So the shape location was not working because it was before initialized particle. It should be below because it goes from top to bottom. Okay, so now it will spawn at the edges. I will add like a bit more velocity, like 100. Make it like very quickly, like 1.2. Spawn rate should be high. Let's do 50. This one I can even do like 0.1 to 0.3. Just play around with it. Okay, I think the video would turn way too big. And then just go in here. Let's do random range. Let's do the same colors. So copy, paste, copy, and then paste. And we get like this effect. Okay, so again, it looks a bit different, but you have to kind of play around with it. And then you could also scale the sprite size in here, sprite size, and then make it go smaller as it goes outside. So again, play around with it until it looks good. I think it looks pretty same right now. Just need to play around with values until it looks good enough. So yeah, that's all for this video. Consider liking and subscribing, checking my Patreon. It helps me run this website, this channel, and providing you with all the textures and resources in much more detailed videos. So yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.